Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison Barnes, and before we get started with today's interview, I would like to send another special shout out to Karen Steele for connecting me with my special guest. And today's guest is Bethany Turner, author of Hadley Beckett's Next Dish, which is her latest book, and a couple of other books too, which we'll talk about in a minute. Welcome to the show, Bethany.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a wife of a radio guy. I am the proud mother of two teenage boys. We live here in Southwest Colorado. We're actually in a valley, even though we're at over 6,000 feet. So the high valley, but beautiful, surrounded by much higher mountains than where we are. But I'm originally from Kentucky, grew up there until I met the hubby, and he's a Colorado boy through and through. So here we are. Yeah, a bit of a culture shock leaving the bluegrass of Kentucky to come to the mountains of Colorado, but I love it. Yeah, and my the day job, I guess you would say, is I'm on full-time staff of a church as part of the leadership team there. And yeah, and when I have time to just really put my heart into something, quite often it's writing these silly and yet hopefully with a message kind of romantic comedies that I love so much. I love telling stories. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, I think.
Wow. So what inspired you to become a writer?
I wish I had a good answer to that. And it's one of those things where honestly, I can't look at any sort of point of, you hear a lot of people say it was the first time I read this book, or it was the first time I heard someone say this, or I'd always been writing, or whatever the case. And that really wasn't it for me. But at the same time, there was a period of my life where I just needed something. I was vice president of a bank, and we went through a couple of major mergers, and that was kind of my part of my job, to kind of oversee a lot of the operations of all of that. It was just an incredibly stressful time. And during that time, I just needed stress relief. And I'd never really been much of a writer. I guess I knew I was okay with words. It's like if someone needed a memo written, they'd come to me and, help me. I'd help them word it out or whatever, but I wasn't a writer of story really. But then during that time, I just needed an outlet. And for whatever reason, one night after everyone had gone to bed, I decided to just write some thoughts. And that was about 7 or 8 years ago. And I guess I just haven't stopped.
It's a God thing.
Definitely.
Yep. I understand. Believe you me. I have my own writing story, but I have to save that for later. But anyway, so, and you've written 2 other books prior to Hadley Beckett. Can you kind of give us a little overview about those?
Sure. The first one is called The Secret Life of Sarah Hollenbeck, and it's the story of a woman who's very well known for writing very steamy romances. And she's, that's the life that she's living. She's recently divorced. She doesn't really know what her purpose in life is. But then through her new best friend that she meets in a book club, her friend Piper introduces her to the Lord. And suddenly she's living a life that she's no longer okay with. And yet she has no idea where to begin on creating this new life that honors God. So that's Sarah Hollenbeck. And then the one after that was called Wooing Cadie McCaffrey. And that's the story of Cadie McCaffrey and Will Whitaker, who have been a couple for 4 years. Long-term, definitely end-game sort of couple, but they've never quite taken the leap to that commitment to forever. And a series of events lead to their breakup. And the kind of the struggle that goes on through that, but then the story really of Will trying to win Cadie back, and the only way he knows to do that, he thinks what she wants is to be wooed like the romantic comedies that she loves so much. So he basically recruits his jock sports network friends that they work at a sports network, recruits them to help him replicate all these gestures from movies that Cadie loves, and in the process figuring out, is that really what she wants or not. So yeah, so they're all of those, and leading into Hadley Beckett, which is about two chefs that get off on the very wrong foot and have to work
Yeah.
together. But there are all these romantic comedies, but with some pretty serious messages at their core.
But there is one caveat to Hadley Beckett that I want to bring to your attention, and if you agree with me or disagree, just let me know.
Okay.
Y'all, don't read this book on an empty stomach.
I would agree.
I'm telling you, you will wish you hadn't, because it made me hungry.
Completely. Yeah, it was. I think I snacked through every moment of writing that book, and the thing is, and I've talked about this before, and I always feel silly saying it, but I don't cook. I mean, I can pull together a few basic meals for my family, but I am not a cook. I'm not a chef. I'm not a baker. I'm none of those things. But in the course of this, so not only am I writing this book, where food is such an integral part, not only just because it is their occupation, but both Hadley and Max, these chef characters, it matters to them for a reason that, goes back to their differing upbringings and different things, and food matters to them, and so it's such a key part of the story. And so having to do so much, not only writing those scenes, but doing the research to figure out how to write those scenes, since I'm not a writer. So watching lots of Food Network, watching lots of those things. And yeah, I tell you, yeah, I was hungry the whole time. So sorry, readers. Don't, yeah, have a meal and then start reading.
I'll be sure to snack while you read.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So what inspired this book? I'm curious.
Well, I really think it started with, I wanted a, the enemies to lovers trope. I'd never written that really. Sarah Hollenbeck, is a relationship. Sarah and Ben just meet each other, and it's kind of love at first sight. And then Will and Cadie are kind of a second chance love. So I don't like doing the same thing, So it was, hey, it's time to write an enemies to lovers book. And so when I started thinking about that, and the other thing that I really felt pretty early on was I just absolutely love writing about the entertainment industry. Sarah Hollenbeck's a famous writer. Cadie and Will work at a sports network. So it was like I knew that there was going to be some sort of thread. And so having Max and Hadley not only as chefs, but as these celebrity chefs who are, stars on the Culinary Channel, as our fictional version is called, but very much a Food Network type thing. And, having that dynamic of they're not just amazing in the kitchen, they're famous for being amazing in the kitchen, but also their personalities. And so then having these completely stark different personalities of Max being this hot-headed heartthrob type, who who's every bit as well known for his temper as he is his brilliance in the kitchen, and Hadley being this sweet and southern, just makes her viewers feel like family and all of that. And I think it was, it was like, okay, that basically wrote itself in my head from that point of having them clash, having them be so different. So that was really, I think, the origins of it. And then from there it was just having them not just be different. I mean, because I didn't just want opposites attract. That exists as well, but I wanted them to genuinely dislike each other and really make it a complete arc that the reader had to go with these characters on in order to see how these two could ever ever fall in love with each other, because it seems like a long shot when you meet them.
Yeah, and the manager kind of setting one off on the other, and oh my gosh, that's a
Yeah,
character you
indeed.
love to hate.
Yes,
Not to spoil
absolutely.
anything, but he's a character you love to hate.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got some layers to him.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me a little bit about your process. Do you plan or do you pants or kind of somewhere in
I
between?
I'm pretty much 100% pantser. Um, when I, in order to pitch a book, um, you have to have an idea. I start with, like, this book in particular was a one-page blurb, basically, is what was approved. That's literally what I knew when I started writing, was this one-page blurb, which is basically the extent of what you can learn from the back cover copy. And so yeah, from that point on, I have no idea what's going to happen. I really don't. I think because I write in first person, which this book and Wooing Katie McCaffrey are both alternating point of view of the heroine's first person point of view, and then the third person point of view of the
I noticed
hero.
that.
Yeah, and because of the first person, though, which first person is my favorite to write. And
Turned out to be mine too.
really,
Yes.
yeah, there's something so freeing about it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, tell me. I want to know why you like it.
Well, for one, okay. For one, it helps me get more into the character's head. And I'm writing a Christian psychological thriller with supernatural, visionary, and metaphysical elements thrown in there. So I was trying to write the thing, and let's just say I had a publishing snafu in it. I'm not going to go into all the details because listeners have heard that before, but I'll tell you after the recording. But anyway, I had a publishing snafu, realized the book needed to be really edited and rewritten. I'd self-published it, turned around and figured out and rewrote and changed a lot of the story. And at 4 o'clock one morning, my character said, I need you to let me tell my story.
Huh.
That's when I knew that I would really get to know Becca better by putting it in first person. Because third
Yeah,
person wasn't working for me.
yeah. Well, and I, even though I haven't had, an experience just like what you were describing, which I do look forward to hearing the rest of that story.
Oh, I'll tell you
Um,
later, but I've
I
told the
look
listeners
forward to
before.
it. But I totally identify with what you're saying there. It's just, and when I first, when I was talking about being in banking and starting to write, I started writing first person, but I didn't even know I was writing a book. It was almost like I was journaling as as this made up person. And that was just fun and freeing, and just a release and the imagination, and talking in someone else's voice and all these things. And so that's when I really discovered I do love first person. And so I think by doing that too, going back to my process, it's um, I'm hearing her voice rather than my own. And so I am waiting for her to tell me. It's like this combination of she is in me, but also I'm seeing her story playing out on the screen in front of me.
Like a movie.
And like a movie, exactly. And so it's not so much writing what I think should happen next. It's, oh, well, this is what would happen next with these people, like they are
This is
real.
what she's telling me to write, right?
Exactly. So it's really yeah, I love it. And so, but it's also frustrating at times being such a pantser in that way, because for one thing, sometimes they stop talking to you, and I know that happens with blotters too.
I do a little both myself, but
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
or they'll talk to
yeah.
you at the most inopportune times when you can't
Oh,
write. But that you know what I do? I take my phone, I email the little notes to myself to put in my questions and plot points to
mm,
consider, and I go from there. And then I look at those to make sure I'm straight. So that,
yeah.
and I was a pantser myself at first, and then I realized doing a little bit of plotting really helps you find out details about the story that you totally did not expect.
Yeah, yeah. I'm discovering more and more that I am beginning to plot in my rewrites. Um, but I just can't do it on my first draft. I just yet it just hasn't worked for me. And not to say I won't, but I've just got to just see where it will go. And
Yeah.
then once I start rewriting, it's like, okay, I really like this, I really like this, I really like this. So I can kind of set up these touchstones that I'm going to use as a guide. So a little bit of plotting, but not a lot. Yeah, just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, no, I do like bare bones. And sometimes I'm inspired. Like when I start a new project, I will see it in a dream. It may not make sense at
Mm,
first, but I will see
yeah.
bits and pieces in a dream that are like, okay, what is this telling me? And I
Mm,
will have to go outside on my steps or on my mother's front porch or whatever, and I will have to do some brainstorming outside before I can really
yeah.
see the whole thing. That's just me. I love
Yeah.
my wind chimes and I, brainstorm like that or through music or whatever. So is there a certain particular place you like to write, or are you all over the place, or?
I have a chair here in my office. This room that I'm in is actually oh, it's crazy. It's become my everything room because it is my it is my bedroom, and I've always had a little writing nook set up in the corner. And then on the other corner I have just a comfortable chair where I do a lot of writing. Um, More than a writing nook, it's more my work nook in the office area. But I've been working from home since, the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and so my day job is also here now. So anyway, it's looking a little different right now. But in general, yeah, I just have this comfy chair in the corner of my room, and that's where most of it happens. Music is so key for me. I create a different playlist at the start of every new project, and it's really it's it's always music that my character would listen to. You know,
It's funny you mention that because another author friend of mine, who I am very and you guys know I give her shout outs all the time, Jen Lowry from the Jen Lowry Writes podcast. She was the one that inspired me to create playlists. I have Amazon Music because I have an Echo Dot. Well, I have one in the bedroom, one in here, but um, but she's the one that inspired me to create playlists for my books.
mm,
And then these songs just start getting stuck. And I don't know if this happens for you, but for me, sometimes God will tell me or my characters or God or both will tell me something based on a song that's in my head. And it will not leave me
absolutely.
alone until I figure out what it means.
Absolutely. I've had that sort of thing for sure. And and the other thing that it really does for me is by having this playlist that I create that's their music, I, like Hadley Beckett, for instance,
Hmm.
she's a Nashville girl through and through. Of course, Hadley listens to country music. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I am not a
Yeah.
country music fan personally. So that was a little outside of my comfort zone of figuring out these songs and all this stuff. But once I did, and once I knew what Hadley's music was, and I listened to it every time I sit down to write, and it's funny, before long, when you hear the music, the story starts flowing. It's really this mental aid, I guess you would say,
You and I are
to
so much alike. We
really
write in
set the
different
same.
genres, but I'm telling you, because I'm the same way. It's like once I get the music down, I have a theme song for my character.
Yep.
And I can read books and find their theme songs sometimes. But
Mm,
and it's like sometimes like with the song, I will play if a song gets stuck in my head, even a part of the song, I will play that sucker for hours until I get through that creative process because
yeah,
that song really pushes me forward.
yeah. It evokes, for me, it's usually the emotions that are evoked by the song more than anything else, because music makes us feel one way or another. We
Right.
feel, and it's like I can count on. There are times, this, when you're writing, where it's just you have to go to a little bit of a darker place, or you have to go to a sadder place, or you are with your character in their agony or in their
And it'll make you and you will feel the emotions. And it's
you
not
will.
just emotions. Sometimes the song evokes an image that she
Yes,
and then it
very
links
true.
me to verses in the Bible.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's where I come up with some of the imagery that it painted in words, of course, but the imagery because I see the images in my head, and
Yeah.
it's just so quirky how that works, but it works.
It works. It works. I'm a believer, and it's enough to the point of just, it used to just kind of happen that way, that I would just be like, oh, I need some music to listen to. And, but more and more, it is an intentional thing. It's like on my first day of writing, I pull together a playlist because I know I'm not going to get very far without the music.
There's a question, since you and I have very similar processes. Do you, and for me, it's not just music. Do you have like see something or hear something, or you're drawn to an element in life? It could be something really simple, but it pulls you in and you don't know why you're inspired by it or why you're drawn to it, and then you realize it has something to do with your story.
Yeah, actually, I think I know what you're talking about. I'd love to. You sound like that has definitely happened to you.
Yeah,
A fair amount.
I was playing an Uno game online on a game client that I use, and I was drawn to the reds and the draw twos. Do not ask me why. I remember it was something about a card. It was another thing that I was writing that is going to have to go through a lot of changes. But for some reason, that red draw two had a note associated with it for the story, and it was like that was what I was drawn to. And I even talked about it in a solo episode for you guys, you listeners. You need to go back and check that out, because that's why I inspired people to not take all these little elements, these simple things for granted, because sometimes just something little. It could be a sound, it could be a game you're playing, it could be something somebody says. Like I heard umbrellas and chairs at Walmart one time. Stuff like random stuff like that can interweave into your story. And it is
Absolutely.
so weird, but yet so awesome.
Yes, it is. It's there. I have a friend, one of my best friends. We used to always refer to those sorts of things as plot fairies. Just kind of we'd be like, plot fairies, because something would come along that it was suddenly like, oh my goodness, I can't even shut my brain off. Whatever this little trigger was, it was almost like there's these fairies in your head dancing around, suddenly giving you the story, which of course I don't believe it's truly fairies. I believe it's God more often than not. But we would just plot fairies, because there's no explanation for it other than just, wow, there's something new here that wasn't there until I saw that image or I heard that sound or whatever it may be. Yeah.
I know. And some people call it, I guess some people, I've heard of plot bunnies too, but that's the first time I've ever heard of plot fairies.
Plot fairies.
Yeah, I'll have to remember that. So, do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
My biggest advice that I always think of, and I'm like, I hear these authors with these brilliant things to say I'm like, oh, that is actually amazing advice that I wish I had heard, and all of that. Mine, I can never come up with anything like that. But what always comes to mind, and I'm like, it is the truest thing I can say, and that is, don't try to be a writer that already exists.
No.
I think there's so much, so much about my story, even of how I started writing, how I got published, the journey that I've had, the stories that I write. It's like any of these factors, if you were to look at any of the sites of, these are the best ways to get published, these are the ways to write a story, none of my journey is on any of that. But what I did is I came out with a unique voice that only I have, which we all have a unique voice in us that only we have. Sometimes we spend too much time trying to be someone else's voice and we don't discover our unique voice, but we've got one if we'll search for it. But finding that voice and writing a story, truly, I like The Secret Life of Sarah Hollenbeck was just a story that entertained me. It was a story I wanted to read, and I wrote it. And, so it's things like that really, that's it. You have to be you, because the world already has Colleen Coble and Denise Hunter and Rachel Hoke and all these, Charles Martin, and they're all brilliant and amazing, but they're already there. Don't try to be them. Try to be you and figure out what that is. And yeah, it may not be the easier road to publication, because sure, when things are taking off and big, it's like, okay, we want more writers like Charles Martin. Let's find everybody that's great. And yeah, you may be able to publish a book by trying to be like Charles Martin, but it's like, ultimately, when that style maybe isn't what publishers are looking for anymore, then what? So I really think the only way to truly do this is to be you.
Right. And find what works for you. And I've given advice like that too, because I found that what works for me may not work for somebody else.
Absolutely.
So have you done NaNoWriMo before?
I've tried. I've never been very successful at it.
Well, you know what? For me, it's not. Winning is easy if you can get there. If you don't get there, you're still a winner because you got words on the page. I'm doing the Camp
Right.
NaNoWriMo session right now, and I find that doing, even whether I'm doing NaNoWriMo or not, I find doing writing sprints, writing. And I don't know if you're familiar with word sprints.
Yeah.
Writing sprints. I don't know if that works for you, but I find that's actually working for me. It's pushing me forward, because if I don't, I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. No, I wish that worked for me, and I keep trying to make it work for me. It just hasn't yet so far. I don't know what it is, but I need a solid 2 to 3 hour block, no interruptions. And I mean, like I said, husband, teenagers, day job, that's not always feasible. But that's my ideal. And when I really get stuff done with writing is just, I need to immerse myself in this world. I'm putting on the headphones, I'm listening to the music, I'm blocking out everything, and I need time to get there. And then I'm off and running. So the sprint sort of thing has never worked for me, but I want it to. It would work so much better with my life.
Like I said, everybody's process is different. I mean,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
can draft without sprints sometimes, but sometimes with these rewrites, especially pushing forward with the sprints, a few minutes on, a few minutes off, a few minutes on, I think seem to get more done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, now the Secret Life of Sarah. Anyway,
Hollenbeck.
yeah, Hollenbeck. I couldn't remember. Did you have her writing a story within that story? Because I haven't read that one, so I'm curious.
I did. It doesn't. There's actually multiple layers. She writes the steamy romance. Obviously, none of that is ever on the page, but it is referenced. But then once she meets the Lord, she really wants to write the type of romance that she would like to read. And so that's kind of a lot of it. So there's not a lot of on the page story within a story, but it's a continual part of her development and her process, and trying to figure out what does she have to offer to her readers, who are expecting this one thing from her, and she's not going to give it to them anymore. And then there's these other readers, who maybe would love a Christian romance that she could write, but they're already biased against her because of her past. So she's kind of torn within these stories within a story, I guess you could say.
Because I've read by authors who've had their characters write the story. I've read books that, like Susanna Kearsley, for instance, she writes a story within a story, and I don't remember the name of the book. I'd have to go look it up. But I've seen that before, and I didn't know if you had tried to do that or not. And
I kind of debated about that a little bit, and there's a certain, by the end of the book, she has decided that basically the love story that she wants to write is her love story, because she has fallen in love with a pastor. Ben Delaney is her pastor on her first Sunday at church. And so there's a whole lot there, as you can imagine. But so there's always in the back of my mind, I've always looked at the book that readers have just read is the story that she ended up writing. But I never say that. And it's like, you don't miss anything if you don't get that. But in my head, I've always kind of seen it that way. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So where can people find you online?
I am C. Bethany Wright, S-E-E, Bethany, W-R-I-T-E, pretty much everywhere. I'm cbethanyWright.com. On Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, I'm C. Bethany Wright. Facebook is definitely my biggest hangout, I guess you would say. But Facebook and Instagram, I love to connect with people mostly there.
Mm. Okie doke. And before we close out, do you have any questions for me?
Oh, well, apart from wanting to hear more about that story once we get off the air,
Yeah, apart from that.
I can't think of anything, but
Okay.
I've loved everything I've gotten to learn about your experience and your writing process, and I just think, um, yeah, we do have a lot of similarities. It sounds like you and I.
Yes, we do. So, do you have a favorite verse you'd like to share?
Oh,
And I don't want to put you on
um,
the spot. It's just,
no, that's okay. It varies. Like when I early in the writing process, my life verse, I guess you would say, was Ephesians 3:20 of now to him who is able to do more than, infinitely more than I've ever dreamed or thought possible. I know I butchered that, um,
I saw that on your
but
website.
yeah, that's kind of been my life verse because every step of the way, um, God has just blown my mind with what he's up to. And it's stuff, it's like, I think I have these big dreams and these big aspirations. And in the meantime, God's saying, when are you really going to start dreaming? When are you going to challenge me? When are you going to challenge me? You think that's all I can do? Let me show you what I can do. And so that's just amazing. But through Hadley Beckett, my other verse really became, oh goodness, and I don't remember where it is, and I'm sorry that I'm forgetting the passage, but it's the come, see, I am doing a new thing. Um, oh goodness, I cannot believe I've forgotten where that's found. But that to me was so powerful, of God, just saying, look, we've done this, yes, and it worked. It worked. That is great. It's great that it worked. Quit worrying though about how to keep trying to make that work. I'm doing a new thing over here, and I very much felt that through this entire writing process as he challenged me in some ways with this story, and with life that was happening all around during it. So, and even through launch. I mean, I launched on May 5th. Right in the middle
Yeah.
of lockdown and all these different things, so having to do, it's like everything I'd counted on and everything I thought I could count on, apart from God who is absolutely still there, but pretty much everything else was gone. And God just kept saying, come see, I'm doing a new thing. So yeah.
Yep. That's how it works. So, I was going to ask you something and I totally forgot. Anyway, would you like to close us out in prayer?
Oh sure, I would be honored. Thank you. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity to get together and chat with Anne, and for getting to hear a little bit of her story and make a new friend on that. I'm so grateful for the paths that you cross, that it just people we never would have met, but you intersect, and I'm just so grateful for that. And for anyone listening to this, Lord, I just want to pray special blessing upon them in this time in our world right now. There's so much, but you, Lord, you're in charge of it all. Not only are you in charge, none of it has surprised you. And so I just pray that you continue to guide us, you continue to make your presence known. Thank you for the gift of books and writing and story, and for the example that Jesus set for us so long ago in every way, but right down to the parables and the stories that he told. And just for the power of story, Lord, I'm so grateful for it. Thank you for this opportunity, and just use us, those of us who write, um, for you, Lord. Just please use us, help us to reach many more for the kingdom for you. We love you, Lord, and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched 1,000. Thanks for watching and listening to Inspirational Journeys, where your story matters. Have a blessed day, everyone.